Hi friends, welcome you to ANR Academy. Today we continue our lesson for plus 1 CBSE students. The name of the lesson is The Portrait of a Lady, written by Kulwant Singh. In our previous videos we learned half of the story. Today, let me continue the remaining story. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would upset. So when the narrator decided to go abroad for his studies, he was very much sure that his grandmother would create some scene. That means generally the elderly people, they do not like their grandchildren to go abroad, to live a far off place from them. So he thought that definitely his grandmother would feel sad. I would be away for 5 years. You see, once if you go for abroad, you do not return back till you finish your studies. So the narrator would be 5 years out of India. That is the thing. The narrator had a doubt that his grandmother would not allow him to go abroad. But here something opposite happened. What happened? And at her age, one could never tell. But one could never tell means what? Nobody could say when she would die. So at that stage, the narrator was very sure that his grandmother would not allow him to go. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She doesn't follow the sentiments. She very well allowed the narrator to go abroad to continue his studies there. She came to leave me at the railway station, but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. She was completely busy in her prayer. She didn't become sentimental even. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of a rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. Why did the narrator feel like that? Actually, grandmother has become very old, and he would be in abroad for 5 years. So he was in doubt whether he could see his grandmother physically or not when he would return back from abroad. But that was not so. That means it didn't happen like that. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. So nothing happened to grandmother. Grandmother was alive when he returned back from abroad, and she came to the railway station to receive him. She still had no time for words. At that time also she was praying silently, telling the rosary. And while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebirths. You see, generally what happens when some relatives would come, we forego some of our habits. We do not continue our routine. So that day, though, her grandchild has come, after 5 years, she didn't skip feeding the sparrows and that day she spent more time and had more talks with the sparrows. In the evening, a change came over her. In the evening, everybody noticed a change in her. What was that notice? She did not pray. She didn't pray God or didn't tell the rosary. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum and started to sing. She started making the neighbors to come and sing along with her. She collected an old drum. For several hours, she thumped the sagging strings of the dilapidated drum. You see, it is an old drum. Its skin is not tight. You see, for drums, we tighten the skin. It is loosely fitted. What is loosely fitted? The skin. So that is the thing. It didn't produce right sound even, and sang of the homecoming of warriors. You see, we sing some songs about rejoicing, the happy moment of the warriors returning back after a victorious war. Such songs she started singing along with the neighbor women. We had to persuade her to stop. You see, she has become very old. So all the family members, they started persuading her to stop, to avoid overstraining. This singing and thumping the drum would make her weak, overstraining. In order to stop that, the family members started requesting her. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. So it was the first moment grandmother, without worshipping God, she engaged herself in other what? In singing the songs, in other activity. Next morning, she was taken ill. So definitely it happens when an elderly person gets overstrained, would become sick. So same thing happened to grandmother also. So everybody took it lightly. Everybody took it lightly. It was a mild fever and the doctor told us that it would go. So it was told by the doctor that grandmother caught a mild fever and once she would take some medicines, she would become alright. But my grandmother thought differently. Her conclusion was somewhat different. She told us that her end was near. She said, you see, just I am counting the days. My end has come now. I wanted to see my grandchild. It is over. Now all my wishes are granted. So I do not want to live further. So my end has come very close. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. Very clearly she said, you see, only a few hours are left. And what I did yesterday, I didn't pray God. So let me concentrate myself and let me pray God. Nobody should disturb me. Like that she gave orders to all the family members. But the family members are not ready to accept grandmother's predictions. We protested. They said, no, you are talking nonsense. You see, the doctor has come, you have some medicines, and you took that medicine, and you will become fine. But she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving, and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. You see, within few minutes what happened, after she laid herself on bed and praying and telling her beads, what happened all of a sudden, without anybody's suspect, her lips stopped moving. There was no movement in the lips, and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread. You see, pallor means cover. Pallor means what? Cover. Her face was covered by a very peaceful look. You see, we see some dead bodies. When the life would leave the dead body, the face would become a very fearful one or dreadful one. Here, the grandmother's face was so peaceful that nobody could suspect that grandmother expired. Smile was there on her face. Lot of peace was there on her face. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. We lifted her off the bed. You see, in our Hindu custom, as soon as a body would become lifeless, we keep the body on the ground. As is customary, laid her on the ground and covered with a red shroud. You see, we covered the body with a shroud. Shroud means what? A piece of cloth. Kafan bolte hain Hindi mein. What we call it? Kafan. Understood? After a few hours of mourning, so it is usual. All the family members assemble there and they mourn. Clear? After that what happened? We left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. So, they started doing the arrangements. You see, people should come to carry at least 4, and they have to make a pad and everything. So they started doing all these things. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. You see, they make a crude stretcher with the help of bamboos and other things. And they went into grandmother's room to take the body out. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. So her room was covered with a wonderful golden light by the evening sun. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. Because in the courtyard, at that particular time, all the sparrows used to assemble there to eat the bread pieces thrown by grandmother. So the sparrows have come. The sparrows have come, but there is no grandmother to give what? Bread pieces. All over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. That room, courtyard, everything covered with the sparrows. There was no chirping, though thousands of sparrows got assembled there there was no sound. You see, whereas we human beings, we do not follow this. Even we do not mind to make our mobile phone silent. Understood? But here these sparrows, they assembled there, thousands of sparrows, without producing any sound. There was no chirping. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. Narrator's mother brought some bread pieces and spread them for the sparrows to eat. She broke it into little crumbs, the way my grandmother used to, and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. They didn't even look at that bread. They didn't even look. Whereas when we go for such places, we ask whether tea is arranged or not, whether breakfast is arranged or not, everything. And breakfast from which caterers it was ordered, that also we asked. अरे यार, उससे मंगाने से अच्छा होता, उसका ब्रेकफास्ट अच्छा होता है, उसका पूरी सब्जी अच्छा रहता है. Like that we say. But here these birds, they didn't make any noise. Even they didn't touch the bread pieces thrown by the narrator's mother. Next morning, the sweeper swept breadcrumbs into the dustbin. Next day, what happened? The sweeper collected all the bread pieces and thrown into the dustbin. The sparrows, they didn't touch even a single piece of the bread. So disciplined they are. That is the thing in the beginning I said. So now, I think you understood the special quality that the narrator's grandmother has. What is that? To get adjusted along with the circumstances. To get adjusted along with the circumstances. Understood? So, this is a lesson for all elderly people. They should get adjusted to the circumstances, and in order to become happy, they should make others also live happily. That is the thing we learn from this story. I think you liked the story. Tomorrow again I come up with a new lesson. Till then, have a nice day, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel, English for All Examinations. Thank you for watching.